Good evening, everyone. And tonight we continue with Jubilees. So I'm going to remind you about where we are in this fascinating development of the Watcher's story, sometimes called the Watcher's myth. You can even call it the Watcher's legend, as it develops in Second Temple Judaism. So as you remember, we began with Reshit Vav, with Genesis 6, where we had the story of the Bnei Elohim, Ubnot Adam, the divine beings of some kind, or that seems to be what that term means. And the daughters of man, they have children. In terms of reading the chapter, are those children the Nephilim, or do the Nephilim kind of exist already? That actually comes up later when you say, okay, so are and it came up a little bit when we looked at the chapter. If you say they're there already, so are the Nephilim the angels who have fallen from Nephal? However, the Nephilim in Numbers and Bamidbar are identified as giants, right? So there you have the giant connection, not in Genesis itself, but in Numbers. That giant connection is assumed in Enoch, in the Book of the Watchers, where we read about, we had this kind of where we read about how these angels, they had these giants. There were also angels who taught forbidden knowledge. Those giants were either completely killed by the flood, or in the later, what seems to be the later chapter, they actually become evil spirits that are destructive and stick around on earth even after their bodies are destroyed. And that's because they're an illicit mixture of spirit and flesh. And so the spirits kind of stay, they have to kind of stick around even though the flesh is destroyed, and they become evil demons. Now, in Enoch, it wasn't super clear whether these evil demons actually cause humans to sin or whether they simply cause destruction. There's a reason to say that they cause destruction, because you want to be able to blame destruction on some demonic forces. Okay, now we're going to see how this is developed in the Book of Jubilees. We already began this last time, but I am going to start kind of from the beginning so that we are not coming in out of nowhere. Actually, no, I think we stopped really before we got into it last time because the class was already running late. But let's go in to our Jubilees chapters. So if you look, I sent you the excerpts of what we're discussing today. I will also show them on my screen. Okay, so you don't have to worry about it if you didn't read it. You don't have to prepare for this class. So I'm going to share my screen now. So in the Book of Jubilees, we already have an account in chapter 4:15. So remember that the Book of Jubilees is the frame is that this is the book that's given to Moses on Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai, at the same time that essentially the Torah is given. And this is the real story that the angels are giving, that the angels of the presence are giving Moshe. As such, it retells the story of creation all the way up into Exodus. So here we are, but it tells it in Jubilees, and it makes it clear that it's solar years, 364-day years. So Jubilees is 7 weeks, a week being a set of 7 years, during the second week of the 10th Jubilee. Okay, so and here you have Vanderkam, who did this translation, is very helpfully giving you the years by the count, okay, from creation. So during the second week of the 10th Jubilee, Malal married Dinah, the daughter of Barakiel, the daughter of his father's brother. She gave birth to a son for him the 3rd week in its 6th year. He named him Yared, right? Because during his lifetime, the angels of the Lord, who were called Watchers, descended to earth to teach mankind and to do what is just and upright upon the earth. So this is, let's dive into this for a second, okay? So on the one hand, you have Yared, right? Which the root means to go down, to descend, right? Or it means to descend. And so why is he named Yared? This is, in fact, the biblical name of Yared, because it was during his generation that the Watchers descended. Now, in this account, the Watchers descended originally to teach mankind and to do what is just and upright upon the earth. In other words, there were angels who descended who had a good mission. Their original intention was good, okay? And they were meant to teach mankind, and that's a good thing. Teaching mankind is not a bad thing, like you have in Enoch. You'll also find that medicine in the Book of Jubilees is not a bad thing. Remember that in Enoch, they were taught kind of plants, etc. So they were taught medicine as a forbidden knowledge. Jubilees is going to change that. And then in our next account, here we have in chapter 5, and I believe we talked about this last week. It seems a very long time ago. Sorry. When mankind began to multiply on the surface of the entire earth, as we noted, this is very close to the biblical text. When mankind began to multiply on the surface of the entire earth and daughters were born to them, the angels of the Lord in a certain year of this Jubilee saw that they were beautiful to look at, as remember that they're tovot, right? That they're good. And here it's interpreted as beautiful. Again, hardly a surprise. So they married of them whomever they chose. They gave birth to children for them, and they were giants. Wickedness increased on the earth. Okay, now this actually still is very close to the biblical account. In terms of what do we have here? We have an account. Mankind began to multiply. Angels of the Lord see they're beautiful. They marry them. Here it's, they marry them, not they just took them, right? They give birth to children, and they're giants. Again, taking the Nephilim account from the Book of Numbers, of Bamidbar. And then right after, wickedness increased on the earth, okay? It is not noted here that there's an actual connection between that wickedness and what these angels have done. You have the angels, and then you have wickedness increasing on the earth. So if we look at the biblical account, okay, here we have the biblical account of the B'nai Elohim who take human women, right? B'nai Elohim et B'not Adam, excuse me. Let's get rid of this sidebar here. And right after this account, right after the account, it ends, we find out that the Nephilim were on earth, and also afterwards that Asher Yavo B'nai Elohim el B'not Adam, that the divine beings had relations with the human women, okay, and they gave birth to them. So it clearly seems to be the Nephilim were born. I say clearly, but again, there are two readings, and they gave birth to them, right? These are the men of renown. Without a clear negative connotation, we simply have right afterwards that God sees that human evil has increased, right? It's great on earth, how every plan devised by the human mind was nothing but evil all the time, or all day, if you want to be literal from the Hebrew. So we see that here in chapter 5 of Jubilees, chapters 4 to 5 of Jubilees, it's a very similar setup. It's giving you the story of these angels. The angels mate with human women. They have giant children, and then wickedness increased on the earth. Okay. Note that they begin to devour one another. That is somewhat similar to the account in Enoch of the Watchers devouring everything. Wickedness increased on the earth. Every thought of all mankind's knowledge was evil like this all the time. Okay. And then there's the decision to have the flood. However, then we realize that this whole account of the evil that precedes the flood has been inserted in a way into the Watcher's story. Because as we continue, we say in chapter 5-6, against his angels whom he had sent to the earth, he was angry enough to uproot from all their positions of authority. In other words, God had sent these Watchers to earth. Their job was to teach humans and do good stuff. They mated with human women. In other words, see how we're reframing the story. They then mated with human women. They had giants. Then wickedness increased on the earth. Still staying very close to the biblical text, but rearranging things. Then God decides he's going to wipe out the earth and save Noah. And against his angels, he was angry enough to uproot them from all their positions of authority. He told us to tie them up in the depths of the earth. Now they are tied within them and are alone. Regarding their children, there went out from his presence in order to strike them with the sword and to remove them from beneath the sky. Okay, this is from Enoch, right? The angels are bound and their children are killed. Okay, now we go back to the biblical text. He said, my spirit will not remain on people forever, for they are flesh. Their lifespan is to be 120 years. Saying very close. He's not saying angels. He's saying my spirit will not remain on people forever, for they are flesh. Their lifespan is to be 120 years. And then it makes clear that what is he referring to? The giants. He sent his sword among them so that they would kill one another. What's very interesting here is the interpretive device that it's using, where there's an assumption, there's an assumption that we know the biblical text really well because it's staying very true to it. It's just rearranging things. It's like, guys, yeah, we're not changing anything. Nothing's changed. It's angels do this, then the flood, but the angels, and we're just juxtaposing it, but then we're explaining, yeah, there's a connection here. There's a real connection, right? Because there's a flood punishment and the angel punishment, and those 120 years are connected to the killing of the giants, okay? They began to kill each other until all of them fell by the sword and were obliterated from the earth. Again, keeping with that tradition that we already saw in Enoch, that the giants are so violent, you just have to give them swords, they'll kill each other, and that's the punishment for them and their fathers, the angels. Now their fathers were watching, but afterwards they were tied up in the depths of the earth until the great day of judgment, when there will be condemnation on all who have corrupted their ways and their actions before the Lord. He obliterated all from their places. There remained no one of them whom he did not judge for all their wickedness. He made a new and righteous nature for all his creatures. Remember Enoch? Remember how all evil disappears somehow after this, and after the flood? Like, this is kind of a callback to that. He made a new and righteous nature for all his creatures so that they would not sin with their whole nature until eternity. Everyone will be righteous, each according to his kind for all time. So again, like in Enoch, it's jumping ahead to a messianic age without telling you it's jumping ahead. Okay. Now, what we're seeing here is an actual, and it's clear by how closely it stays to the story in the Book of Watchers, that first of all, the Book of Jubilees has to post-date the Book of Watchers. It's close enough that it's taking that account and it's making it work much more closely with the biblical text. In general, the Book of Enoch, it's interpreting the biblical text, but it's less concerned about being super true to the biblical text. Jubilees really wants to kind of it seems like Jubilees audience is supposed to have the Hebrew Bible, particularly the Torah, particularly Bereshit and Shemot, Genesis and Exodus, in their minds. And this is tying them together. It's taking the Enoch story and tying it very closely with the biblical account, because again, it's supposed to give you this is the real story. This is the real story of what was happening around the flood with the angels, etc. Okay, so this ties that Watcher story very, very inextricably with the flood and with humans sinning. Now I'm jumping ahead. This is excerpted, but I'm jumping ahead 2 chapters to chapter 7. Okay, this is now after the flood. Okay, so Noah is now watching out for his sons and grandchildren. Right, Shem has sons, Japheth has sons. Right, Ham also has sons, and he wants to give his children the laws. Right. During the 28th Jubilee, that being years 1324 to 72, again, Vanderkam has done the math for us, Noah began to prescribe for his grandsons the ordinances and the commandments, every statute which he knew. He testified to his sons that they should do what is right, cover the shame of their bodies, bless the one who had created them, honor father and mother, love one another, and keep themselves from fornication, uncleanness, and from all injustice. Now, it's very possible that this is connected to the traditional the traditional commandments for the sons of Noah. In other words, this is one version of the Noahide commandments that's already being kind of a tradition in Judaism. These are the commandments for non-Jews, right? Do what is right, cover your bodies, bless the one who created them. That also means don't curse God. Remember, there's a law against cursing God. Honor father and mother, love one another, and keep yourselves from fornication, uncleanness, and from all injustice. It's actually not far from what we talk about as the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Enoch, the seven commandments for the sons of Noah, even though obviously not at all identical. But it's and absolutely understandable also as basic moral precepts. All of these things kind of work as basic moral or ethical precepts that would be good for all humankind. Now, for it was, and now we're going to get back to the watchers, okay? For it was on account of these three things that the flood was on the earth, since it was due to fornication that the watchers had illicit intercourse, apart from the mandate of their authority with women. When they married, so what it's showing that fornication, uncleanness, and injustice are terrible, and it was because of these three things that that the flood was on. The flood came because of these last three. Why? Because of the watchers. Here, that connection is made very explicit. Okay, that the flood came because of what the watchers did. What did the watchers do? They had illicit intercourse. Okay, so let's continue. For it was on account of these three things the flood was on the earth, since it was due to fornication that the watchers had illicit intercourse apart from the mandate of their authority with women. When they married them, whomever they chose, they committed the first acts of uncleanness. Now, I want to point out here, this is a little bit different than what the sin is described as in the Book of Watchers. Now, I'm going to remind you, the Book of Watchers is probably from around, let's say, 250 BCE, maybe even earlier. Book of Jubilees generally considered to be around 160 BCE. So there's a very large gap in terms of time here, and lots of time for this to kind of develop. And also the Jubilees has its own take on this story. So what is the sin that the angels have committed? Well, it is connected. The angels have committed, part of what the problem is that they've destroyed the natural order of things in Enoch. And part of it is that they are angels who live forever, so therefore they don't get children. The reason humans get children is because they don't live forever. So by you saying you want children, that goes against everything. Now, also, as in Enoch as well, there's this idea of this illicit meeting of pure angel spirit and human beings. You are not allowed to have this. This is an illicit match. Okay. So here, as soon as they married them, they committed the first acts of uncleanness. They fathered as their sons the Nephilim. They were all dissimilar from one another and would devour one another. It's possible that it's all dissimilar. Perhaps it's not super. This is a little bit of a leap because the animal apocalypse is not that early. But in the animal apocalypse, they have all sorts of different animal children when they marry. When the angels who are who disguise themselves as the cows and the bulls in the animal apocalypse, as the bulls rather, in the animal apocalypse, mate with the cows of the animal apocalypse, who are human women, who represent human women. So they disguise themselves as men. They mate with what's represented as cows, which are meant to be human women. Remember, everything's translated into animals in the animal apocalypse. The children are then all sorts of different animals, giraffes and elephants, right? So it's possible that this is connected, that perhaps even both accounts are connected to this idea that the initial children weren't just giants, they were actually different weird kind of maybe monsters or something. So they're all dissimilar from one another and would devour one another. The giant killed the Nephil. The Nephil killed the Elyo. We have no idea what the Elyo are, right? The Elyo, mankind. So here it's actually looking at different generations. The giant killed the Nephil. Perhaps, again, because in the biblical verse, it said the Nephilim were on earth at that time. And so it's already saying, okay, there had to be different generations. When everyone sold himself to commit injustice and to shed innocent blood, the earth was filled with injustice. So what has happened? The wickedness of the Watchers has spread like a kind of disease, like a kind of virus. They're killing each other, right? And then it spreads to humans. When everyone sold himself to commit injustice and to shed innocent blood, the earth was filled with injustice. After them, all the animals, birds, and whatever moves about and whatever walks on the earth, much blood was shed on the earth. All the thoughts and wishes of mankind were devoted to thinking up what was useless and wicked all the time. Again, very close to the biblical verse, going back to the biblical verse, saying that the wickedness of the thoughts of man, that's because of the Watchers, because they started, their children were violent. That violence was catching. It caught to people, and then from people to animals and birds, because remember that everything gets killed by the flood. So why does everything get killed by the flood? And the answer is because they all sinned. They all sinned because of this tremendous violence that was catching. Then the Lord obliterated all from the surface of the earth because of their actions and because of the blood which they had shed on the earth. We, I and you, my children, remember Noah is speaking to his children and grandchildren. I and you, my children, and everything that entered the ark with us were left. But now I am the first to see your actions, that you have not been conducting yourselves properly, because you have begun to conduct yourselves in the way of destruction, to separate from one another, to be jealous of one another, and not to be together for one another, my sons. For I myself see that the demons have begun to lead you and your children astray. Now, this is a switch. And I want to point this out because the words that are used in Jubilees, and again, it's a little bit difficult here because if you remember, Jubilees was written in Hebrew, then it was translated into Greek, and what we have for the most part is Jubilees in Ethiopic, which is a translation of the Greek. So, but it does seem to keep the same words. However, this is a little bit of an assumption, right? But we do notice that before, the Watchers are the Watchers, angels are angels, spirits are, there's a different word for spirits, which is manifest. That's the word for spirits. If you see manifest, you can hear nephesh in the root of that word. Ethiopic is a Semitic language with African influences. Not a surprise, right? That it would have African influences. It is a little bit of a surprise that it's a Semitic language, but it is a Semitic language. And so it has roots that you can point to. And if you know Hebrew grammar, it uses binyanim, but it has a lot more of them. In other words, it has the same sort of grammatical constructs as Hebrew does, but it has a lot more of these verbal constructs than Hebrew does. And anyway, manifest is spirits. If you think of nephesh, right? And aginant is demons. That's more from genie, right? If you think of genie, right? Aginant, right? So that's that connection. Those words are actually connected. I'm not just saying just think of it. It's not a mnemonic device. It's those they're cognates. So these are demons. Now he says, so I myself see that the demons have begun to lead you and your children astray. Now I fear regarding you that after I have died, you will shed human blood on the earth, and that you yourselves will be obliterated from the surface of the earth. Okay. Now, so what's going on? He started with saying, okay, the Watchers had these giants because the Watchers sinned through fornication, uncleanness, and injustice, right? That's what caused the flood. Because the Watchers had illicit intercourse, they had these giants, the giants were violent, that was catching, everyone became horrible, and we needed the flood. And they had the flood. God had the flood. And now I see that you guys are being awful. You are not been conducting yourselves properly because you've begun to conduct yourselves in the way of destruction, to separate from one another, to be jealous of one another, and not to be together. Why? For I myself see that the demons have begun to lead you and your children astray. Now I fear regarding you that after I have died, you will shed human blood on the earth, and that you yourselves will be obliterated from the surface of the earth. You would, like the giants, essentially, you're going to start this violence again, and there will be another flood, essentially. For everyone who sheds human blood and everyone who consumes the blood of any animate being will all be obliterated from the earth. Of course, this is another callback. This is a callback to the first commandments to Noah, right? When he descends from the ark, right? He can eat all animals, but he cannot consume the blood. right? And anyone who spills human blood will be executed for that blood that is spilled, right? That is from the biblical verses. So now Noah is bringing this up in a connected, but it connected to these demonic forces. The demonic forces are causing enmity between you. I'm worried you're going to kill each other. And remember, you're not allowed to kill each other, and you're not allowed to eat blood. Okay? No one who consumes blood or who sheds blood on the earth will be left. He will be left with neither descendants nor posterity, etc., etc. No blood of all the blood which there may be at any time when you sacrifice any animal. Now, this is something that Jubilees also does, is it expands on commandments as early as possible. It likes something the Book of Jubilees likes to do is predate various commandments as early as they possibly can. So you'll have holidays showing up much like in the time of the patriarchs. So here we have the specifics about not eating any of the blood when you sacrifice animals that we read about later, particularly in, for example, Vayikra and Leviticus, right? That you have to make sure that not to eat any of the blood when you sacrifice an animal that you're essentially eating, right? If you bring like a shlamim sacrifice, you're essentially eating the whole animal, except for the stuff you're not allowed to eat. One of the things which is the blood, right? So you do sacrifice blood, but you're not allowed to eat blood. Do a good deed for yourselves by covering what is poured out on the surface of the earth. Again, that's also a commandment that's given more particularly with wild animals, right? To cover their blood, which is not sacrificed, because you don't sacrifice a wild animal at all. But if you have a deer, right, you cover the blood, right? So that's a later commandment in the Torah, but Jubilees is putting it in as early as possible. So we're for the earth will not be purified of the blood which has been shed on it, but by the blood of the one who shed it, the earth will be purified in all its generations. Okay, and then he continues to command them to do justice. And then so we don't know, but he said, okay, there are demons. We don't really know where the demons are from, right? It's not explicit where the demons are from. But yeah, he talked about the watchers, he talked about the giants, and he's like, now I'm worried the demons are leading you astray. But he hasn't said where the demons are, where the demons are from, and he uses a specific word, demons, which is not the same as the word for spirits or the word for angels. So we don't know yet where these demons are from. I'm going to pause because I see there are comments and questions. Just a moment as I open them. Oh, here we are. Okay. So Danny and Libby ask, is Jubilee saying the 120-year lifespan is for the Nephilim, not for people? It is heavily implying that it is for the giants. Yes. Because it's not, well, you can, let's go back to those verses. We have them in front of us. Here we are. As you can see, this verse is in the middle of the commandment for the giants to be killed, and yet the verse is taken. The verse hasn't been changed. My spirit will not remain on people forever, for they are flesh. Right? He's taking that verse, saying that verse that you know by heart. It's talking about the giants. Okay, that's who it's about. So Emotional Teacher also says, regarding the terms giants, Nephilim, and Elyo, perhaps rather than 3 different generations, maybe these are intended to elaborate on the previous verse that said the offspring were different from one another, i.e. there are 3 different types born in a single generation. So when they married them, they fathered as their sons Nephilim. They were all dissimilar from one another. The giant killed the Nephil killed the Elyo mankind. Yes, Moshe, you are right. I think that is rather than 3 generations. It's more. It's also they were all dissimilar from one another. That works as an expansion, right? It's still a little strange. Where is this coming from? Right. In other words, the reason that you might want to read it as generations is because why are you saying that they're different? Why are we saying the giant aren't the Nephil and the Elyo are something else also? So it would make sense if you're saying, oh, okay, it's because you're reading those verses and you're like, okay, well, they're Giborim, right? They're the heroes of old. They're the Nephilim who existed already somehow. So that would work a little bit better with the biblical verses. But you're right that they were all dissimilar from one another works well with saying that they're just three different types that coexist at the same time. Moving back to the comments.
Was it just
yes.
one other thing about the Elio? I mean, I don't know how that was supposed to have been spelled in the original Hebrew, but just from the sound of it, it's very reminiscent of Elyon, like El Elyon.
Oh, that's interesting. Actually, if you look here, and I had here, if you look here, it reminds us that we saw these names, that this is actually taken from Enoch. Still, we don't know where it's from. But if you look at this note, right? Giant, Nephil, Elio, these names reproduce the ones found in First Enoch in the sinfulness edition. Gigantus, Megalus, Nephilim, Eliud. Okay, that's the here, Gigantus, Megalus, right? Large giants, Nephilim, Eliud. Okay. But still, where did they come from in Enoch? It seems weird to me that they would have Elyon, particularly since Avraham says, Avraham doesn't seem to be like, there's to say El Elyon, it's too, like, for example, if this were a much earlier work, much earlier, in other words, if you said to me, this was directly connected to the Ugaritic story of the gracious gods, where you have El Elyon, essentially. It's El. He's not called Elyon there, by the way. So El mates with human women, right? 2 human women, and they have giants who start devouring everything, right? So, but this is so far from that. And you do have El Elyon in the Torah as what Abraham wants to say kind of equals God in a way. Like, what you think is El Elyon, I am telling you is not. It's a little, to me, and also, if you look again, it's Eliud, because they're also copying this over, right? This is from the Hebrew to the, from the Hebrew to the Greek to the Ethiopic. So somewhere the D was dropped, right? Eliud makes less sense with Elyon, right? If you say that's the earlier version. I mean, I hear what you're saying, right? And you could say, because it's also like a little bit like you have in kind of medieval prayers where they, or demon bowls, where it's just drawing names from all sorts of weird like deities and stuff like that, and those kind of become demons, right? So you could, that in that sense it makes sense. The only thing is like where you would have to take, because in general, because El Elyon is what we have in the Torah. That's not what you have in Ugaritic. From what I remember, Baal is called Elyon, but I have to look again, right? And so I don't know. The thing is, it's kind of anyone's guess, to be perfectly honest. People don't know where Eliud is from, so your guess is as good as anyone else's, certainly. So now we have a further development in how Jubilees is presenting the Watchers, and this is possibly the most fascinating part, and it really is kind of the gateway into how many saw the descendants of the Watchers, or perhaps the Watchers themselves. So in chapter 10, again, we're skipping ahead. Okay. During the third week of the Jubilee, impure demons began to mislead Noah's grandchildren. Now, this is important because the angels before sinned with impurity, and now for the first time we're having this connection. Remember, the demons. I'm worried that the demons are going to sow enmity between you and cause violence. And now it's made clear those demons are impure demons, where impure before was used for what the Watchers did. Okay, so now those impure demons began to mislead Noah's grandchildren, just like Noah was worried about, to make them act foolishly and to destroy them. Then Noah's sons came to their father Noah and told him about the demons who were misleading, blinding. Remember that being blind means sinning, okay? So blinding means leading them to sin, okay? They were misleading, blinding, and killing his grandchildren. He prayed before the Lord his God and said, God of the spirits, which are in all animate beings, you who have shown kindness to me, saved me and my sons from the floodwaters, and did not make me perish, as you did to the people meant for destruction, the sinners. Because your mercy for me has been large, and your kindness to me has been great. May your mercy be lifted over the children of your children, and may the wicked spirits not rule them in order to destroy them from the earth. Now, again, we're mixing the words, okay? I'm pointing this out. We had, remember, before it was just demons. Now they're impure demons, still using the ganent word. And now he's calling them spirits, wicked spirits, manifest. Okay. Again, I'm using the Ethiopic because that's what we have. May the wicked spirits not rule them in order to destroy them from the earth. Now you bless me and my children, he's saying to God, so that we may increase, become numerous, and fill the earth. You know how your watchers, the fathers of these spirits, have acted during my lifetime. Now we finally have a clear statement. These spirits who are causing sin, misleading my grandchildren, the ones that I was worried about, they're also called impure demons. They are the children of the Watchers. This is going back to what we read in Enoch, right? That the giants were killed and their spirits essentially became demons on the earth. That's what this is, okay? And it's making it very clear now. It's kind of it's combining the different, you've already kind of got it in pieces, and now it's making it super clear. You know how your watchers, the fathers of these spirits, have acted during my lifetime. As for these spirits who have remained alive, imprison them and hold them captive in the place of judgment. Remember, the giants were killed bodily, but their spirits stayed alive because they're from the angels. So as for these spirits who have remained alive, imprison them and hold them captive in the place of judgment. May they not cause destruction among your servants' sons, my God, for they are savage and were created for the purpose of destroying. May they not rule the spirits of the living, for you alone know their punishment, and may they not have power over the sons of the righteous from now and forevermore. Then our God told us to tie up each one, us meaning the angels who are dictating this story who are giving the story to Moshe, okay? So our God told us to tie them all up. So Noah said, God, you protected us, you saved us, now save us from these wicked spirits. God's like, no problem, tying them all up, okay? Then what happens? When Mastema, this is the first we're hearing about this guy, Mastema, namely Mastema meaning hostility, okay? This is from Hoshech, Ruach Mastema, right? Wind of hostility or spirit of hostility. So Mastema is this satanic angel, right? He's called the angel Mastema. He's called the angel Mastema, and he has a job, like Satan has a job. He's got the same job. He's essentially the Satan character. Okay, Mastema is fulfilling the Satan character. His job is very much what we think of as the Satan's job, and we'll see this here. When Mastema, the leader of the spirits, came, he said, Lord Creator, leave some of them before me. Let them, in others, don't bind them all up. I could use some of them. I am really short-handed. Let them listen to me and do everything that I tell them, because if none of them is left for me, I shall not be able to exercise the authority of my will among mankind. In other words, I have to do my stuff to people. And for that, I need some minion spirits. So I could use these guys. For they are meant for the purposes of destroying and misleading before my punishment, because the evil of mankind is great. What it sounds like is these guys, I need them to destroy humans and mislead them and lead them into sin, because they're very evil. And again, before my punishment, does that mean I'm also involved in this? Or does this mean I need them to mislead them and cause them to do sin until I punish them for doing sin, right? So he's like, I need these guys because the evil of mankind is great. Then he said that 1/10 of them should be left before him. Well, he would make 9 parts to send to the place of judgment. He's like, okay, find 9/10 of them, but I need 1/10. He told one of us. Then let me correct myself. Then he said being God. God said that 1/10 of them should be left before him, while he would make 9 parts to send to the place of judgment. So God makes 9/10 of them descend to the place of judgment, namely being bound down below, and 1/10 of them Mastema gets. He, namely God, told one of us that we should teach Noah all their medicines, because he knew that they would neither conduct themselves properly nor fight fairly. Here, unlike Enoch, where learning of roots and plants, that was in itself illicit knowledge. Here, no. God says to the angels, teach Noah medicine, right? Give him all their medicines, because these demons aren't going to fight fair. Now, what does that mean? That means these demons don't just, remember, those demons destroy. They don't just mislead. They cause sin, but they also cause suffering. So they're causing illness. So Noah needs to learn medicine. These guys aren't going to fight fair. Okay. So going back to our text, so he teach them medicine. We acted in accord with his entire command. All of the evil ones who were savage, we tied up in the place of judgment, while we left 1/10 of them to exercise power on the earth before the Satan being Mastema. It's written in Ethiopic, the Satan, right? That's what's written in Ethiopic. In other words, just saying it's put on the earth before the Satan. We told Noah all the medicines for their diseases were their deceptions, so that he could cure them by means of the earth plants. Noah wrote down in a book everything, just as we had taught him, regarding all the kinds of medicine, and the evil spirits were precluded from pursuing Noah's children. He gave all the books that he had written to his oldest son, Shem, because he loved him much more than all his sons, right? Because Shem is like, that's where Aaron's going to come from, so he's the good guy. Shem is going to have this book of medicine, and that's the line that it's going to be passed down. The next time we hear, now Mastema comes up all over Jubilees, and we're going to come back to Jubilees later when we look at Jubilees as a work, as a book, right? So Mastema shows up throughout Jubilees. He's the main bad guy. He's always, kind of trying to do things against Israel, against people. He's the main bad guy for just about everything. And here we have, and so here I'm going to skip a little ahead to 11 to just see another example where we do see Mastema essentially commanding, apparently, these demons. So in the beginning of chapter 11, chapter 11, verse 2, during this Jubilee, Noah's children began to fight one another, to take captives and to kill one another. Remember, this is what Noah was worried about from the demons. To shed human blood on the earth, to consume blood. And again, they weren't allowed to do. Remember, you don't eat blood. He told them specifically, don't eat blood. So they did eat blood, right? They're shedding blood. They're doing all the bad stuff. And then to build fortified cities, walls, and towers, meant to elevate themselves over peoples, to set up the first kingdoms, to go to war. It's very interesting here what is being combined as evil, right? Eating blood, of course, evil, commandment against it. Shedding human blood, clearly evil. Taking captives, killing one another, all of these are evil. And that's being combined with building cities, walls, towers, elevating yourselves over other peoples, setting up kingdoms, and therefore going to war. It's all kind of combined. And it kind of is true. As soon as you have a fortified city, other people want what you have. War is kind of a next step, right? People against people, nations against nations, city against city, and everyone to do evil, acquire weapons, and to teach warfare to their sons. Okay? Here, teaching warfare comes not from Asael, from the original angel. That was good. God wanted the angels to teach knowledge. Remember, he wanted to the earth to teach knowledge. No. This is from the demons that were causing violence and this idea of elevating yourself over other people, setting up walled cities, and then you have warfare. City began to capture city and to sell male and female slaves. Things are just getting terrible. They made molten images for themselves. Each one would worship the idol which he had made as his own molten image. They began to make statues, images, and unclean things. The spirits of the savage ones were helping and misleading. So let me correct me. I just said it's humans are doing sin. It's the humans who are doing these things. And then the spirits of the savage ones were helping and misleading them so that they would commit sins, impurities, and transgression. So it seems like the children of the Noah's children began to fight one another and do all these horrible things, exactly what he said not to do. And who's kind of egging them on? These spirits of the savages, right? So now this actually kind of fits with what Mastema was saying before, saying, hey, they're evil. I need these guys help them, right? So they're evil, and these guys are helping them on. Prince Mastema was exerting his power in effecting all these actions, and by means of the spirits, he was sending to those who were placed under his control the ability to commit every kind of error and sin and every kind of transgression, to corrupt, to destroy, and to shed blood on the earth. So that is how the Jubilees is setting up, the way Mastema works with these spirits. People are being evil, and these spirits are egging them on. People are doing things, and these spirits did they instigate it, or are they just helping? It sounds like in this case where they're making it worse, they're egging them on. Here here I just brought an example of a blessing much later, right? Where if we go back, so we have a blessing to Yaakov, to Jacob, right? And he said, my dear son Jacob, whom I myself love, right? May God bless you from above the firmament. May he give you all the blessings with which he blessed Adam, Enoch, Noah, and Shem. Everything that he said to me and everything that he promised to give me, may he attach to you and your descendants until eternity, right? This is the promise to Abraham being passed to Jacob. Like the days of heaven above the earth, may the spirits of Mastema not rule over you and your descendants, to remove you from following the Lord who is your God from now and forever. Okay? Don't let those spirits of Mastema rule over you. Namely, don't let them make you sin. So, what have we seen here? And it's the end of the hour. There is it's the end of the hour, but I do want to point something out that is very interesting in what is going on here. Okay, and we're going to see it more. We're going to see it more as we continue, because what's happening here is the Book of Jubilees is taking these spirits, these evil demons, right? And in Enoch, these demons just exist on the earth, right? Doing whatever the heck, it sounds like whatever the heck they want, they do, right? Hurting people, at least in Enoch, it's hurting people. Here, it's hurting people and causing sin. But they are under the command of Mastema, who is an angel, who is part of kind of the divine system. That's what Jubilees is doing. It's saying those spirits, you know about them, you know they cause evil. They were originally, because angels didn't just come down. God sent angels down to teach good knowledge, right? Knowledge is good, and just all knowledge is good, sounds like, or pretty much all knowledge is good. Send them down to teach knowledge. They messed up. They had these giants, and then the spirits that resulted don't just roam the earth and do whatever they want. They report to Mastema. Mastema is a member of the divine court, and because he's a member of the divine court, angels can't easily beat him. We see, and we'll see when we look at Jubilees as a book later, that the angels are not at all, the good angels are not at all powerless against Mastema. There is a series of blessings by every kind of righteous forefather to protect their children against the spirits of Mastema, like what we just read, or to protect them from Mastema himself. So these spirits are certainly, they cause sin, but they're under control. Now, it's interesting that Van der Toorn, who's a researcher in more ancient Near Eastern things, he said something about the the Pashitu demon in the creation myths of the ancient world, where I believe it's in the Enuma Elish, which is a creation myth there, where the flood is the reason for the flood in the Enuma Elish is because there are too many people. There are too many people. They're making a lot of noise, and the gods are like, this is not no good, and they send a flood to kill them. Okay, and then afterwards they get really hungry because the gods need sacrifices, and there's no one sacrificing to them. They get really, really hungry, and then when the surviving Noah type character, he brings them sacrifices. They realize that they were foolish, and they're like, well, what are we going to do to curb human populations in the future? We should not bring a flood. That was stupid. But let's have this Pashitu demon. She will go around and kill babies and cause miscarriages, and that will curb the human population. And yet, and Van der Toorn says what the author of this work, or the authors of this work, were trying to do is take this Pashitu demon that everyone already believed in as a horrible force for evil, because there's not much more evil than killing little babies. And the fact is that babies are very vulnerable, especially in the ancient world, and they would die. So why would someone cause a baby to die? Why would someone cause a miscarriage? It's not the gods, and it's not something that's not controlled by the gods, which was the Pashitu demon. Pashitu demon, yeah, sure, the Pashitu demon does these things, but she reports to the gods, right? The gods, she's operating within a divine system. So that way you can be like, well, it's horrible, but it's within a system. And here it seems like these demons, which everyone already kind of believes in, they belong to a system. Why? Because it doesn't make any sense. Why would God say they should be bound and then like, oh no, yeah, you can have a tenth of them to cause havoc? Why would you do that? The answer is in terms of the actual goal of the work. This is my theory. So you can take it or leave it, right? That the point is to say that these demons are part of a system as opposed to being chaotic, completely chaotic. Now, what's interesting is that very much what Van der Toorn sees regarding the Pashitu demon, that when you see kind of incantations against the Pashitu demon in the ancient Near East, they don't treat the Pashitu demon as part of any sort of divine system. They treat it as a chaotic demon. They are like, I abjure you, whatever, but they treat it as a chaotic demon that doesn't report to anyone. That is the same thing that we will see to a certain extent in prayers that mention these spirits. They're called the bastard spirits, right? Because they are a formed from an illicit union. So they're called, and they're sometimes simply called the bastards, right? They are, yes, God can absolutely control them because God can control everything, but Mastema is not mentioned in these prayers. These prayers are like, these spirits, help me against these spirits, God, and it treats them as just chaotic spirits. It doesn't act like these spirits are agents of anyone. And so we see the similar thing because people don't want to believe that horrible, evil beings that cause horrible, painful things are from God, or even are part of a divine system. Theologically, you want to believe it, but when you're dealing with that pain, you don't want to believe that. You want to believe that these are forces that are not part of the divine system you believe in, and you call on the divine system to fight them, right? So that's what we actually see in Second Temple thought. But we are going to see that this idea that where does sin come from these demonic spirits, that is something that absolutely is a very popular explanation for sin. And it's not the only explanation by far, but a very popular explanation, certainly more popular than what we call original sin, right? It's absolutely more popular than this idea that we are somehow all sinful from Adam. In terms of being necessarily sinful, not in terms of do humans, as there is the major other idea is that people have an inclination to sin which is what we would call the Yetzer Hara, right? Not the Talmudic Yetzer Hara, which is almost demonic in its own right? But the idea of you went bishrirut libo, right? In the stubbornness of his heart. Well, what does that mean? That means that humans have a tendency to sin, right? They have a kind of a human tendency. Is that since Adam? Yeah, sure, but it doesn't have anything to do with Adam's sin necessarily. So Danny and Libby say, it seems that this literature is building on a concept, perhaps implicit in the Chumash, that an imperfect creator is engaging in a process of trial and error with numerous failures along the way. You are taking a big leap. I don't think that in this period,
that was my question, which was based on Libby's question, which was just previous to that.
It seems like the flood was a total failure. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That was Libby's question.
Yeah. So I think the fact is, okay, that in the account of the flood, when God ends the flood, he's like, no, I'm not going to bring another flood because they're always evil. And you're like, wait, what? I thought the reason for the flood was that they were evil. Right. And then it's not that they're always evil. It's like, I'm not going to bring another flood because they're evil from their youth. Like, wait. I thought that was the reason for the flood, was that they were evil. And now you're saying they're evil. So, and I'm not saying they're evil. I'm paraphrasing because it doesn't say they're evil, right? It says, right, Yetzer machshavot libo, or Yetzer libo, the inclination of their hearts, meaning essentially their minds, is towards bad, right? And the what's changed, right, between bringing the flood and after the flood. And what seems to be the change is there was an expectation before the flood that, I'll tell you what my theory is, and this is a little bit of a leap, especially if you haven't followed my whole interpretation of all the stories kind of Breshit. But the way I see it is that before the flood, you're in the continuation of the Edenic world, where first you have Adam and Eve's sin, which creates the first division between them and animals, right? So after that sin, now they have clothes, they have to work for their food. That's one division, right? Which follows the division of Adam saying, no, none of these are my mate, right? So that's the first division. The second division is, now they've sinned, they recognize they were naked, they must have clothes. Eve is going to have difficulty giving birth, unlike most animals in most cases, right? She can't just give birth just easily. Adam's going to have to work hard in the field. They can't just go and graze or pick fruit off the trees, but they're still not allowed to eat animals. They don't eat animals, right? No eating animals until we get to Noah and the flood. After the flood, God's like, you know what? Eat them. Eat whatever you want. You can eat them all, just not the blood. Right? Why? Because if you read the account before, it's not just that people sinned, it's that people were planning evil all day, so the whole world becomes corrupted, right? Because there's this very close connection between humans and everything else in the world. Humans and animals are together in some way. After the flood, humans and animals are not together at all. You can eat them. That's how separate you are. So from now on, God understands humans can be evil. Humans can be bad, right? So he can't allow the whole world to be destroyed because of humans. Because humans can be bad. Are tigers bad? Do tigers sin? Tigers don't sin. Can they eat people? Sure they can. But that's not a tiger sinning. That's a tiger being a tiger, right? Only humans can sin. So humans can't cause the corruption of the earth anymore. That can't be allowed anymore. God's not going to destroy the world anymore because he knows that people they could be evil from youth. And so you can't allow them that kind of influence over the world. And they don't have that kind of influence over the world anymore. They don't cause the earth itself to be corrupted until Israel comes, the people of Israel come to their land. And then you have a return to that sort of give and take, where if you sin, the land itself will reject you. Not the connection with animals, but the connection between, if you sin, the earth won't take it anymore, right? Only of the people in Israel, in the land of Israel, and that's kind of a return to some kind of natural state, not the original natural state, but a parallel natural state where your sin will itself, in a sense, corrupt the earth to the extent that you will be expelled from it. That's the situation before the flood. That's a situation that, in a way, that the people of Israel come back to the land of Israel. Again, I didn't get a chance. Like you have to, like, it work, especially if you're looking from the Garden of Eden all the way through, so you can kind of see this gradual distancing. But the idea in itself that after the flood, people will be evil is already in the biblical text. Like, it's right there. So if you want to talk about, yes.
So the reason I was asking is because in the biblical text, it seems that people are the source of the problem. So the flood doesn't get rid of all of the evil because of the nature of humans. But
right
in the Book of Jubilees, it's saying that the evil comes from these other sources,
that's the question.
And the flood is supposed to get rid of them, but it doesn't succeed at all.
Right. The flood gets so right. So flood is meant to cleanse the earth, right? It does imply, not just imply, it says, like in Enoch, that people now have a new nature, but then it says, and they will not. It switches to the future. So it looks like Enoch, it's talking about the end time and placing it, in the context of either the flood or the destruction of the Watcher's children, right? And so the fact that Noah, right after the flood in Jubilees, right after the flood, he's like, I'm worried. I see what's going on, and I'm worried that you guys are going to sin. So it's clear that sinning has not been removed from humans by the flood, right? That's clear right away. Whether all sin comes from these demonic forces, it's very easy to read Jubilees and say, no, not at all, because it has this whole lead-in where they're sinning in horrible ways with violence, et cetera, and then it's becoming baked into the whole political system, right? You're building kingdoms, you're building cities, so of course you have war, there are captives taken, which is of course particularly horrible, actually, if you think about what happens to captives, as we know. But this is kind of the height of bad, and it's baked into the system now. And then it says, and the demons were kind of helping. The demons were kind of egging them on and making them able to do it. It sounds like it's helping them also in terms of enabling them to be able to do these things, right? So it's and now actually that I'm thinking about it, it's interesting that the fact that they take captives is actually put as kind of the height of this evil, this growing evil. It's after the war, right? There's warfare and there's killing, and they take captives. That's like the final thing. So and so this idea that this is what they're doing, and the demons are helping, these demonic spirits are helping, and that works with the whole idea of Mastema as a Satan character and saying, hey, people are evil. I need to make sure they get punished, and let's see this thing come to fruition with some help.
So according to this, if Pnei Elohim had not come down and mated with Benot Adam and all that, we'd still have evil, and people would still be bad.
And read Jubilees that way. I think that it's very easy to read Jubilees in a way saying, no, not all sin comes from these demonic forces, but they help, right? It's interesting that in general, you don't see a clear, I will say that in Second Temple texts that are clearly Second Temple, and I am excluding testaments of the 12 patriarchs in this, it is rare to see a real mixing of the idea that sin is caused by demons with an idea that sin is caused by a human inclination as such, like explicitly. In other words, there is one prayer at Qumran that mixes and has evil inclination alongside demonic forces, but besides that, they usually either talk about demonic forces or they talk about a human inclination, one or the other. They don't usually mix them. But it's absolutely true that I think it's implied in Jubilees that it's not the sole cause. It's not the sole cause. It's something. It's very easy to read it as not the sole cause. Again, particularly in that last text where they're doing all this evil, and it's saying, oh, and those spirits are helping. The spirits are also helping with that. So were they the cause of the whole thing? It looks like they, because it starts with them just absolutely not listening to everything that Noah told them. Right? You could it's easier to read it that it was all caused because they started eating blood than to read it that, you know what I mean? Like, because that's relatively close to their list of sins. So, you know, is it because, but even though there's also, by the way, certain texts that seem to imply a connection between demonic worship and eating blood, right? So that's also an interesting kind of mix. But yeah, so if we look again, I'll just so we can see it again, because I'm talking about it at length. So in this text, during this Jubilee, Noah's children began to fight one another, to take captives and to kill one another, to shed human blood in the earth, to consume blood, to build fortified cities, walls, and towers, men to elevate themselves over people, set up the first kingdoms, go to war, people against people, nations against nations, city against city, and everyone to do evil, to acquire weapons, and to teach warfare to their sons. City began to capture city and to sell male and female slaves. And that is the kind of the height of it. And then we have worshiping idols, right? And making statues. And then we have Prince Mastema was exerting his power and affecting all these actions. And by means of the spirits, he was sending to those who were placed under his control the ability to commit every kind of error and sin and every kind of transgression, to corrupt, to destroy, and to shed blood on the earth. Now, you can read this as saying, oh, he was behind all of them, because it says in affecting all these actions, that he was behind all of them. But it started by just saying that they were doing it, right? So it sounds like it sounds like you could read it either way, right? You could say they're doing it, and yeah, he was also behind it. Or you could say, oh, now we're explaining that the reason they were doing it is because of Mastema, right? You know, Mastema and his spirits. So you can read it either way, but it doesn't seem like, it seems like this is, you know, it honestly, it's kind of a callback to what Noah said to begin with, which is, don't do all this stuff. I'm worried that the spirits are going to have an effect on you. He says, way back, here we are. He says, for I myself see that the demons have begun to lead you and your children astray. And now I fear that after I've died, you will shed human blood on the earth. And again, he tells them, don't shed human blood, don't eat blood, et cetera, et cetera. That's what he's worried about. And he's like, do what is just and right. And they don't listen. They do, you know, whatever they say. He says, you have not been conducting yourselves properly because you've begun to conduct yourselves in the ways of destruction, to separate from one another, to be jealous of one another, and not to be together with one another. The demons have begun to lead you and your children astray. So the later thing is exactly that. They're all against each other, right? Their cities, they're warring, and the demons have begun to lead them astray. You can read it either way. You can say, okay, it's explaining to us after telling us about this sin, it's explaining to us that Mastema is behind all of it. Or you can say, well, it's telling us that it's not all them, right? It's not all just them. Why then? Why was it happening? Well, you know, it was being helped along by Mastema and his spirits. So you can read it really either way.
And the flood, in this context, the purpose of the flood is just to sort of get rid of the worst. and like,
the idea of the flood is that the wickedness of the giants in Jubilees, the wickedness of the giants was catching. It was catching so much the entire earth was filled with violence. And it uses a certain word for violence, amata, which I think can actually be traced to Hamas. Like, I think that it's translating the word Hamas, you know, from Greek. I'm not sure what the Greek would in the middle, but it's saying, what is that special violence that caused the flood? It was caused by the violence of the giants, which caught onto the entire earth. It says people, and then animals, and then birds, like everything was contaminated with this horrendous violence. That violence, that level of violence was removed, because it seemed to be an all-encompassing violence that was like catching like a disease. Now it's more specific, and it comes at a time of, it comes a couple generations later, after the flood, and it's I mean, it's baked into the, like I said, it's baked into the political system, but it doesn't require the earth to be destroyed. It's not so all-encompassing that it has to be destroyed. On the contrary, it's like today's earth. It's the world. It's the evil you see in the world, right? Which is not does not require a flood, but is not good. And sometimes much, much worse than not good. Thank you all for joining me. And next time we're going to continue tracing the Watcher's story, particularly in the Qumran scrolls, and how we kind of see it in different places there. And keep an eye out for my short, better kind of deep dive into the biblical text on Bereshit Vav Genesis 6. Again, you don't need to watch it to continue to understand the class. I just wanted to do a better job of discussing it.